Welcome to Jesus is the Deep End. We're so grateful you're joining us as we explore the stories and testimonies of life within the body of Christ at Edgewater Christian Fellowship. Together, we'll hear how God is moving in our church, our community, and in the lives of His people.
Welcome to another episode of Jesus is the Deep End. I'm Nathaniel Duarte. Thanks so much for joining me today. And our guest today is James Dennis. He is one of the elders here at Edgewater. James, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me in here, Nathaniel.
So I'm excited to talk to you, and you're actually the first elder I have recorded with that's not on staff.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to hearing about your life in terms of family and career, and also your work here as an elder and as a teacher. So why don't we begin if you could share your testimony?
Yeah, so you always got to figure out like where your testimony starts and then looking at the highlights. So briefly, I was born in Grants Pass, 44 years old, so born here in 1981. Grew up in a really cool small church that really had a lot of influence on my ideas even now about what church should be. Mm-hmm. Really tight community, a lot of good families in there. In fact, 4 of the current 6 elders went to that church when I was a kid.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're talking a small church of a couple hundred people. Yeah. Good Bible teaching, good family, good. And then, just kind of growing up, being a kid, went to a private school, went to Grants Pass High School, and just kind of walking in the way that I should walk. And then a couple things happened probably at that point in my life. One was the church that we were going to kind of started to steer a little sideways in their doctrine. They were pretty strong into dispensationalism, which has its places, I think. But I remember the breaking point for us as a family was when we were sitting in church and the lead pastor said that because we're dispensationalists, that we're really supposed to be paying attention to what Paul writes. And so he doesn't want any of the youth group kids to be wearing the WWJD bracelets because it shouldn't be what would Jesus do, it would be what would Paul do. And we're like, no, I don't think that's right. The name of your podcast is Jesus is the Deep End.
Yes.
I think Jesus is the deep end.
Yes.
I think Paul would say, no, do what Jesus does.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was kind of a breaking point for us. We started going out to Applegate. And then I just saw this whole different way of looking at the Bible and unpacking the Bible. That same kind of time in my life, I headed off to college for a year or two. And just kind of, I wouldn't say lost my faith in any way, always a believer, but just decided to do some worldly things for a while.
Yeah.
And just kind of wandering around, not doing what I should do. And then after just a couple of years of doing that, ended up back down here in Grants Pass again, and then just kind of the ship got righted, if that makes sense.
Yes. So when you say you didn't lose your faith, but kind of stepped away from it a little bit, was there certain doctrines or teachings you were struggling with, or was it more a lifestyle thing, or?
No, I think it was more of a lifestyle thing.
Okay.
For the most part, I was always the kid who did everything I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to do the things I'm not supposed to do for a little while. And guess what? You're not supposed to do them for a reason.
Yeah.
Because they're not great.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
So that was kind of that phrase. And at that time in my life, I was actually managing grocery stores up in Portland. And I came back down after a particularly hard season and came back into the family business for a little while. And I was like, okay, I think this is what I actually want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So talk a little bit too about your family, married, kids.
Yeah. So I think actually the married and the kids we'll get to with the testimony if we go a little further.
Okay.
This, I think a really highlight a part of my testimony is when I met my wife.
Okay.
So it was when I had come back. I came back to Grants Pass. I started working the family business again. I was like, you know what? This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to live in Grants Pass. I want to kind of go back. I got plugged back in at Applegate. I was doing pretty well, and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. But there wasn't enough work with the family business. So I was praying. And this is a time in my life when I was really, like I said, kind of getting back in and really seeking the Lord. And I'm like, hey, Lord, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And it's really felt on my heart that He wanted me to move back to Portland. I'm like, all right, that's what you want me to do, Lord. I will move back to Portland. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Right.
And so I called up my former boss at the grocery store. I'm like, hey, I always liked you. You were a believer. Can I come work for you again? He's like, yeah, you can come there. And I decided I'd enroll in Portland State. And I remember Then I'm driving back to Portland with all of my stuff in my car, and I'm talking with the Lord, and I'm not happy.
Yeah.
I'm like, God, why are you making me do this? Like, what are we doing? Where I was happy. My friends are down there. My family's down there. I like it down there. The church I like is down there. And possibly the only time in my life I think I heard God speak to me audibly. And he said, stop whining, which is not really what you want to hear God tell you to do, but it's always good advice. He said, stop whining. You're supposed to meet somebody. And I was like, okay, I don't know if this is someone I'm supposed to witness to. I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
So I go back up to Portland, and I go to work for this gentleman who I said, hey, I want to come back and work for you. And his daughter came into the store a few weeks later, and then 6 months later we were married and back in Grants Pass.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And did you immediately, when you came back to Grants Pass, was it back into the family business, or was there a transition before that?
It was funny. So I went up there, I met her, we went on a couple dates. It doesn't work like this for everybody, but after a couple dates, I was like, oh yeah, I actually had no desire to get married. I'd been at my sister's wedding like 6 months earlier, and people were like, you ever gonna get married? And I was like, no, I'm never gonna get married. And then I met her, and I was like, oh, we need to get married like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow would be good. And right after we had like our second or third date, my dad and my uncle who ran the business called me up and said, hey, we actually have an opportunity to buy a couple more businesses. We'll now have enough work for you. You want to come back and do it.
Yeah.
And had that happened before, I'd have never gone back to Portland.
Right.
It's just the way that God works those things out sometimes.
Yes.
So we came back. We just decided we were going to get married, and we were going to get married out at Applegate. And then that is exactly when Edgewater started. So Edgewater started on a Sunday. We got married the following Saturday.
Wow.
So we were at the very first service together. We showed up a little bit late, as young couples will do. Had to sit on the wrestling mats right up front because they didn't have two services yet. There wasn't space. And then we got married the following Sunday. So I always know how long Edgewater's been around because it's right on our anniversary.
Right, yes. So let's talk a little bit about the family business and kind of your transition into that.
Yeah.
Because we were talking a little bit before we started recording, but you kind of grew up around the family business while you were in high school. And a lot of the narrative around family business is the kids hate it, don't want to work it. It feels like there's at least reported drama. Like that's the kind of the popular narrative of a family business and kids coming back to it. What was your experience like, I guess starting as a high schooler with the family enterprise?
Yeah, so they actually started, so just so we know, my family business, my dad and my uncle started a business. We work on people's wells. We don't drill wells. We work on the pumps. We work on filtration. We work on water. And so because it was family business, I started helping them out when I was in high school. And worked together with my dad for the first year. And my dad and I have a fantastic relationship, always have. That was not the best for us. He was stressed out trying to start the business. I'm 17 years old, 17-year-old boys, not great at listening to their dads. So I actually ended up working with my uncle for the first couple of years, and that really was great.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of family businesses have issues. I think that being believers, both my dad and my uncle, having a lot of mutual respect for them, watching their relationship is what has been huge. But as far as like returning to it, it was never what I wanted to do. But I think you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So I went and did a few other things, and I was like, you know what? That was actually pretty great. I thought maybe I wanted to be a lawyer. I thought maybe I wanted to be a doctor. But then after a little while, I was like, I actually like fixing things. I like repairing things. I like meeting people. I meet the coolest and the craziest people just every week.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been how that is. So then when I came back, I didn't know for sure that I was going to do that forever.
Yeah.
I came back and I was like, okay, we're going to do this for a while and we're going to see where God has us. But for now, for my wife and I, that's where God had us and that's what we were doing. So that's 2005.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned meeting some of the coolest and craziest people. And I kind of want to know if you would expound a little bit, because I think sometimes we think about ministry and we think of ministry as something pastors do and elders do. And that's kind of like almost like I think the term for it is the sacred secular work difference.
Right.
But so much of the Christian life, whether you're in formal church ministry or not, it's still ministry. And you're still caring for people and witnessing to them, listening to them, praying for them. Can you share a little bit about how you've been able to minister to people through your business?
Yeah. So first off, I think Jesus was kind. I've been thinking a lot about that actually this year, even that Jesus was just a very kind person. And so I always come into situations just people call me, they've got no water. They don't know what's going on. They're kind of freaked out. And so I get to show up and just, hey, we'll figure this out. Like, how can I help you? Especially widows. And then I just like having conversations with people, tell me a little bit about you and tell me about this. And then everyone has their intro. I am not a natural evangelist. So what I typically like to do is try to figure out how to drop into a conversation that I go to church. Even if it's like, oh, what are you doing next week? And oh, well, hey, I'll be at church on Sunday. Oh, what church do you go to? And then that's how I get to steer the conversation.
Yeah.
And then some people will just let that one slide. And then I'm just like, okay, if you don't want to engage in that, then I'm just going to show you how kind and professional and responsible a church person can be.
Right.
And we'll leave you with that impression. If you want to engage in that, I've prayed with people, I've prayed for people, I've invited people to church, I've sat with people in church. And then sometimes there's just the ministry of loneliness. I think it's something that Mark Skudstead talks about. Some of these people are just lonely. And I've sat on porches and listened to stories. And I met a guy who was a casino manager in the 40s. He knew Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. and just sitting there and talking to him, and he's just lonely.
Yeah.
But I always like to let people know somehow that I'm a Christian. And maybe that's, there's a fish on the truck or just being kind. But more so I like to bring up church because I like the church we go to, and I think that it's a good entryway.
Yeah.
And then people can get more specific.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the church because you are an elder here. Mm-hmm. And for someone who maybe doesn't know what an elder does or what that means,
right?
How would you explain that to them?
So it's interesting how the modern church dynamic has taken elder as to maybe what it was. I don't think we're far off of what it was, but elder and pastor is same word.
Yeah.
So we have to parse that out a little bit to say, like, in the modern church, in the Edgewater, there are elders who are not pastors. I'm an elder, but I'm not a pastor here. And there are pastors who are not elders. So we use the term pastor to basically talk about someone who's employed by the church to be in a spiritual aspect, right? We have people who are employed by the church to work on the grounds, and they do pastoral work. But we have people who are specifically employed to be pastors.
Yes.
You call up, you need to talk to someone, you need to be prayed for, we're going to send you a pastor. And that is, we use that term to say someone employed by the church. Elder is really the decision makers. And that is the way that I see the church originally set up was there were men who God had placed on them the calling and the responsibility to shepherd his flock. And shepherding his flock can be protecting them from wolves. It can be guarding the gospel and making sure that true doctrine is taught. And it can be being good stewards of the finances and how, what we do with the resources that God has blessed us with. And so that's really the role of elder that I see.
Okay.
And I've been an elder for 10 years now, I think.
Wow. Okay. So what was it? Because you've been here since the beginning, since the first Sunday. So what was that process like of becoming an elder and taking on that responsibility? How did that happen for you?
Now, it's a good question. So we spent our first year of marriage not serving. A piece of advice that because Mark did our wedding. I've known this guy since I was a kid. His piece of advice was, your first year of marriage, just be married. Make that your number one thing. And I'm not opposed to people serving together, but just be married. Make that your number one priority. He said, go on too many vacations, have too much fun. Like there is years of service and building houses and mortgages and building businesses, and you only have year one of marriage once.
Right.
So that's what we did year one. And then after that, we got involved in the kids wing. So I was in the kids wing for a couple of years, and then we got involved in high school ministry. So we did a high school ministry for 5 years, I think. We didn't have kids for 7 years. So for 5 years, it was just my wife and I doing high school ministry.
Yeah.
And the high school pastor at that time had a team of teachers. So there was 4 of us who taught. And then as Matt started, when he went back to seminary or when he would be out for Sundays or Wednesdays, I started to get opportunities to teach. And so I just started teaching Wednesdays periodically, Sundays periodically. I remember the very first time that I taught. Of course, you're so nervous,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
I'm 20, what am I, 26, 27. And I'm up there and I'm like 3/4 of the way through it. And I look out and I'm like, there's people falling asleep. And I'm like, oh no, man, I'm losing them. Like, wrap it up, James. Get off the stage, man. They're falling like flies. So I get off the stage and I go over to Mark and he's like, hey, you did a pretty good job. I'm like, man, people were falling asleep. He goes, people always fall asleep. It's like, well, you should tell people that. That's like
Yes.
important information
Yes.
ahead of time.
Yes.
So, so I did that for a number of years. And then we had a deacon board for a little while that I was on. But really, the more that we've thought about it theologically, when you look in Acts and they have deacons, they didn't have employees.
Right.
Where the deacons of the church are really the people who are employed by the church at this point, when you're talking about a church at this size. And so as that was phasing out, I think one of the elders who was here had gotten older and they were moving. And so I just got a call from Matt, said, hey, let's go out to lunch. And he asked if I would join the elder board. And I said I'd pray about it. And there we go.
Yeah. So was it more excitement, intimidation? Kind of what was that feeling of that responsibility?
I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yeah.
I knew most of the men in the room. And so it was a deep honor.
Yeah.
For sure, a deep honor. And then just, okay, Lord, this is what I firmly believe that that's what you called me to do. And so I didn't say yes, I said I'd pray about it. So after I prayed about it, then I'm kind of a big proponent of, if God tells you to do something, then you don't worry about the rest of it. You just go. And whether you're nervous or scared or excited, or it's all secondary to obedience.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. Yeah. And you talked about too your teaching. And yeah, you teach now on Sunday mornings when Matt's not here. You do Wednesday nights pretty consistently on the rotation. And I'm curious because you're not a pastor,
right?
And you're not on staff. I don't know what training you've had in terms of teaching, but it's one of those things that I think that regardless of whether you're in front of people teaching the word, or you are leading a community group or a Bible study, or even your own personal devotions, learning how to interact with the word is such an important thing. So in your process of, starting in high school and kids wing, and then being, learning and teaching, and then eventually teaching Sunday worship, what have you walked away with in terms of how to approach the word that someone, whether they teach or not, might be able to utilize in their walk? Yeah.
So I've actually taught a class a few times called Teach to Teach. And I think that I'm contemplating teaching it again sometime soon. And I might actually change the name to Teach to Study, because it's really study.
Yeah.
I think that until I started teaching, I never fully valued meditation. Right? So when I would read.
Yeah.
So I think there's reading and there's studying and there's meditation. And I think they're different and they each have their roles. So when I would read. When I would study, I would, look up Greek words and look in the concordance and see parallel scriptures. And then there's other parts to study. Like I really think that when you study, you should read the same passage multiple times. I think there's so much value to that people miss. I also think, like, if you're reading an epistle, you should probably at least one time sit down and read it from start to end.
Yeah.
Because that's how they were read. Yeah. And all of that's read and all of that's study. But if you're going to teach it, you have to meditate on it. You have to roll it over. You have to think about it. It's actually, I don't know if I would be a I don't know how good of a teacher I would be if I had to teach as consistently as, say, Matt.
Yeah.
Because my process is a lot longer.
Okay.
There's a lot of meditation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, and especially in my life now, I've got 4 kids, I run a business, and I'm an elder here.
Yeah.
And so I will tell you, a lot of my Bible study is done in the car
Yeah.
with the radio off while I'm driving, thinking about whatever thing I was reading or studying or looking through that morning
Yeah.
or that afternoon. And that's where I see the value. So the actual craft of teaching is 2 parts to me. It's taking all of your meditation and your thoughts and putting them in a logical order, and then not being so scared that you can't present it.
Yeah.
Those 2.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I don't. It's an important gift in the church. I think people put way too much emphasis on it because it's a rare gift, and I think it's rare not because it's special, because we don't need 10,000 teachers.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
We need 10,000 prayers.
Yes.
And we need 10,000 hospitable people.
Yes.
We only need a handful of teachers.
Right.
So the teaching gift, I actually believe is more rare, simply because it's less needed.
Yeah. And I think you touched on the whole meditation part and really allowing yourself the time to chew on the word. And I think that's more and more becoming such a lost art in just our lives in general.
Yeah.
Because we have so many distractions pulling us here and there, so many screens, so many things to do, that I think we, when you read the word and it talks about meditating on it, I think we're starting to lose what that means unless you make a concerted effort to make that a point.
We're scared of silence.
Yes.
We are.
Yes.
As a culture, we're scared of it. It weirds us out.
Yep.
And it's a really good practice.
Yeah.
To just roll it around. What does that mean? What do I think about that? How does that work? Also, it'll give you great conversations later with your spouse or other people you run into. Or I end up talking with customers about what I'm meditating on, because that's what I'm meditating on.
Yes.
It's
funny, at least in my life, I find that when I'm meditating on a certain passage, I don't know if it's because it just comes up or because I'm looking for it, but I tend to find things that passage applies to, that pop up during the day, where it's like, I've just been thinking about this text over and over again, and suddenly there's either a situation or conversation where it's a natural segue to bring up.
And I think meditation, because of Eastern mysticism and stuff, let me define meditation as more just like spending some time thinking about whatever it was that you read, or the passage, or a concept. Like, what does the incarnation mean? And that time thinking about it, it can be 2-3 minutes, it can be 4 minutes, it can be 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes during a drive. But it is just like turning your thoughts back to the things of God.
Yes.
And then thinking about them.
Right.
That to me is probably been what I've taken most out of teaching.
Yeah.
Well,
I did want to talk a little bit about your latest Sunday teaching in November on Psalm 100.
Yes.
And corporate worship, because you touched on something that I think is so important, especially in a big church where we have a beautiful building, we have a talented praise team, we have all these different things. But one of the things you touched on is that our gathering is not to be something we spectate and something that we just experience, but rather it's to be something that we engage in, whether that's singing loudly, whether you can sing well or not.
Right.
But I'd love to just talk a little bit about, the importance of coming to church and participating versus sitting back and watching.
Yeah. I think it is easier to do in a small church. And so I grew up as the culture that if you went to church, you participated in church, and you gave. And that is financial, but it's time, it's energy, it's talents. And so it makes no sense to me. There's times where if there's times to be in a church and just, okay, I need to be fed right now. Like I'm hurting, I'm starving, I'm the hospital. And I'm in the hospital and I'm injured.
Yes.
Right. So I need to be taken care of.
Yeah.
But then once you're well, it's the body. God, we are all supposed to be serving each other. And it just happened to me a week ago. I was talking to a customer, and they're like, they don't go here, but they listen to the podcast, and they're like, "Oh, did you teach? You taught last Wednesday?" And it's like, "Yeah, I taught last Wednesday." And they're like, "Oh, when are you going to start your own church?" I'm like, "That is my church."
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to be the head pastor to make it my church.
Right.
You don't have to be on stage at all
Yeah.
to make it your church. Like, this is the body of believers who you are part of. And if you're a member of that body, then you're serving that body in whatever capacity that is. And you get so much more out of it if you engage that way. Just, who can I love on today?
Right.
Who can I smile at?
Yes.
Who can I give a hug to?
Yeah.
I've actually been trying to take that out of church even a little bit more. I've been told that I'm like I don't have a very approachable personality when I'm out. Like, if I engage you, great. But if I'm just walking around the grocery store, like, people don't come up and talk to me.
Yeah.
And I know people just come up and talk to me. I'm like, how do I've been trying to take that practice even outside of the church and just like, I want to be engaging. I want to be approachable. I think Jesus was that way.
Yes.
Just people just approached him. I think that's really, really huge. Yeah. But as far as getting back to the idea of it being your church, yeah, I think you have to get involved. Doesn't mean you necessarily have to be on some service team, but just come ready to learn, come ready to follow along with the passages, come with the idea of, I want to take something home with me. Lord, how can you change me today? Maybe even just approaching church prayerfully beforehand with anticipation, I think, is big. I mean, we were talking earlier about kind of your journey, and you were talking about coming to Edgewater and just how it was this breath of fresh. And so when you find a church that's like that, like, the goal is to not lose that anticipation.
Right.
What do I get to learn this week?
Yes.
What am I going to hear this week?
Yes.
Like, can I meet a new person this week? Can I learn a new song? Can I sing really, really loud and annoy someone? Whatever it is,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think, I mean, a lot of it is, at least for me personally, I mean, obviously you can point the finger and say, oh, it's this church, that church, but a lot of it is the heart attitude that I'm coming to church with. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the importance too of not putting a church or people on a pedestal that they shouldn't be on. And remembering that we are all human.
Yep.
We are all loved by Jesus, saved by Jesus, and we're not perfect. And if I walk into church with the expectation of everything has to be exactly the way I like it, that is a surefire way to have me be critical and take the joy out of going. Like, if I'm going and like, well, this wasn't right and that wasn't right and this person didn't do that and this person didn't do this, pretty soon I'm not going with a heart that wants to worship God. I'm going with a critical spirit that wants to just find something to complain about.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's a horrible to approach the Christian life in general, but going to church in particular.
Yeah.
And I also think that I think I talked to this about this to maybe Mark, it might have been Josiah, but just the whole, everyone wants to be loved and have people be transparent with them. But sometimes, and in my experience, you have to lead with your own transparency. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes that gets missed.
Yeah.
And obviously there's absolutely circumstances where it's harder for certain people who have had very traumatic things, and being immediately transparent is not wise.
No.
I absolutely get that. But sometimes it's that two-way street of, I wanted to develop this relationship with this person, these people. And so how can I contribute to starting that relationship? Mm-hmm. Because often relationships don't just magically appear out of nowhere.
No.
There's effort by hopefully both, but sometimes it's one or the other of the parties in it that begin it.
Yeah. I have to give you my time.
Yeah.
That's how a relationship is built.
Yeah.
I give you my time. Because I value you.
Yeah.
And then we can build to a place of transparency.
Yes. And yeah, I'm super excited about the community groups relaunch that's coming. The training was Sunday, the leadership training was Sunday. And I just think it's so valuable because I think one of the inherent dangers of a big church is that we don't really know each other all that well. We have our friends,
Yeah.
and we have the people we normally talk to, but we don't really know
You can't
other
know
people.
You can't know everybody here.
Yes.
Like there's not possible.
Yes. So making events and groups where people have the opportunity to meet someone they might not normally talk to and develop relationships
Yeah.
is so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the big church is just a different thing.
Yeah.
And it provides so much, but you need a community.
Yes.
You need to do things alongside of somebody. The Christian walk was never supposed to be solo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where obviously our relationship with Jesus is with Jesus, but we were made and created to be in relationship with other people.
And I learned so much about Jesus through my relationship with other people.
Yes.
And I also learned how much I'm not like Jesus through my relationships with other people.
Right. Yes. Yes. So as we kind of wrap things up here, anything else you want to share about your life, your work here at the church, anything that we might not have covered that you wanted to share?
No, I'm a very proud father of 4. So I've got a 13-year-old daughter, I've got an 11-year-old daughter, I've got an 8-year-old son, and I've got a 4-year-old daughter. And I think that that's a huge part of my ministry at this point, is those kids.
Yeah.
Praying for them, loving on them, trying to show them Jesus in a lot of different ways. So I think that's huge. I think it's an important time in life. I think just had my 20th anniversary with my wife, so that's been. I love being married. When we phase out of having younger kids, my wife and I'll probably do some marriage stuff with the church somehow, because we just both think that it's one of the best things that's ever happened. It's one of the first institutions that God designed was marriage, and in the garden it was perfect, and it will never be perfect, but we can walk in that, and there's no better way of seeing Jesus and experiencing Jesus than walking alongside your spouse in that. I think is huge. So I'm excited for other things with the church. I'm excited for so one of my other roles in the church now is I'm pretty involved in missions. So I've done multiple missions trips to Africa, 4 trips to Africa in the last dozen years. I'm very connected with our friend Pastor Douglas over there, who runs the church in Kenya. I've been connecting with some other guys. We've got a missions trip going to India. So if there are people in the church who are interested in missions, I'm your kind of point of contact. And that's one of the other things that we do as elders. We're kind of trying to take different spheres. And so one of mine is missions, and it's something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
So, have you ever done a missions trip?
I have not done a missions trip.
Oh, we're going to get you to Kenya.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, I appreciate your time today, and thank you for sharing your story. Could you close us in prayer?
I'd love to. Father, I thank you for the institution of the church, the Big C church, Lord, your believers, every race, every language, every country, those who call you King. Lord, and I thank you for this church, this body of believers at Edgewater Christian Fellowship. I thank you for the leadership. I thank you for the pastors. I thank you for Nathaniel here working and putting up this podcast where we can share our testimonies. His testimonies are so powerful. Father, I pray for even the people who are going to come this next week, who maybe haven't been in church in forever, who have walked away or have never heard or made you their Lord, that this would be a turning point for them. So I thank you for the fact that you're working in your believers every day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for listening to Jesus is the Deep End. If you'd like to connect, ask questions, or share feedback, we welcome your comments at jesusisthedeepend@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at JesusIsTheDeepEnd. To learn more about Edgewater Christian Fellowship in Grants Pass, please visit edgewaterfellowship.org. Until next time, our prayer is that you encounter God in praise, prayer, preaching, and community, that He transforms the world through you.